See this?
In the vast, dusty sprawl of the American West, there stood a ranch like no other, the Ponderosa. It was more than just a backdrop for gunfights and cattle drives. It was the beating heart of one of the most iconic television families in history. For 14 seasons, Bonanza took viewers into a world of honor, family, conflict, and redemption. And at its center stood the Cartwrights, 3 sons, 1 father, and a legacy that defined an era. Premiering in 1959, Bonanza was groundbreaking. It was one of the first weekly TV shows to be broadcast in full color, and its themes stretched far beyond the typical shoot-'em-up formula of westerns. The show explored fatherhood, racial tension, justice, grief, and love, all set against the scenic majesty of the American frontier. But more than that, Bonanza gave audiences something rare, a family of men who expressed emotion, faced hardship, and stood for something bigger than themselves. At the helm was Lorne Greene, the wise and unwavering Ben Cartwright, a man who had lost 3 wives but raised 3 very different sons. There was Adam, the intellectual and brooding eldest, Haas, the gentle giant with a heart as wide as the plains, and little Joe, the impulsive romantic with a spark of youthful fire. Viewers saw themselves in the Cartwrights, in their loyalty, their struggles, their triumphs. But time, like the trail, stretches on. And now, one by one, the actors who brought these unforgettable characters to life have ridden off into the sunset. Some were taken too soon, like Dan Blocker, whose death at just 43 sent shockwaves through the show's cast and fans. Others, like Lorne Greene and Michael Landon, lived long enough to watch their legacy shape generations of television. Still more, Pernell Roberts, Victorson Young, Ray Teal, may have been quieter names, but their presence was no less vital to the spirit of Bonanza. In this video, we journey back to the Ponderosa. Not just to revisit classic moments, but to remember the actors behind them. Who were they, outside the booths and saddles? How did fame shape their lives? And what did they leave behind when the cameras stopped rolling? This is more than a tribute. It's a ride through memory, through the dust trails and campfires of a show that didn't just entertain, but connected. We remember not only the Cartwrights, but the men who gave them life. The ones who helped build a Western that was never about just the West. It was about the human spirit, and the bonds that hold families, on screen and off, together. So saddle up. The trail ahead is filled with stories, some triumphant, some tragic, all unforgettable. This is Bonanza, as you've never seen it before. Lorne Greene, the patriarch who gave the West its moral compass. To generations of television viewers, Lorne Greene wasn't just an actor. He was the father figure America wished it had. As Ben Cartwright, the wise and principled head of the Cartwright clan, Greene anchored Bonanza with a sense of calm authority and emotional depth that set it apart from every other Western on TV. With his deep, resonant voice and unwavering gaze, he didn't need to draw his gun to command a room. He only needed to speak. Born in Canada in 1915, Lorne Greene began his career as a radio broadcaster during World War II, earning the nickname, "The Voice of Doom," for his grave wartime reports. But it was acting that eventually called him westward, and by the late 1950s, he found himself cast in a role that would change television history forever. As Ben Cartwright, he portrayed a widower who had raised 3 sons, each by a different mother, and led the Ponderosa Ranch with both compassion and conviction. Greene's performance stood out in a genre dominated by lone gunmen and outlaws. He made fatherhood heroic. Whether confronting a rustler or counseling one of his sons through heartache, Ben Cartwright was unwavering in his values: justice, loyalty, and honor. It was a role Lorne Greene took seriously, and it mirrored much of who he was in real life: dignified, thoughtful, and deeply respected. Outside of Bonanza, Greene enjoyed success as a singer. His 1964 single, Ringo, was a surprise hit, and later returned to prominence as Commander Adama in Battlestar Galactica. But it was the Ponderosa he always came back to in the hearts of fans. Lorne Greene passed away on September 11, 1987, at the age of 72, after complications from pneumonia. His death marked the end of an era, not just for Bonanza, but for a kind of television storytelling that believed deeply in morality, family, and emotional truth. Greene didn't just play a patriarch, he became one. And in the hearts of those who watched, he'll always be there, standing tall on the porch of the Ponderosa, watching the horizon, keeping his family, and ours, together. Dan Blocker, the gentle giant who gave Bonanza its heart. In a genre often defined by gunfights, grit, and gruff cowboys, Dan Blocker brought something truly rare to Bonanza: tenderness. As Eric Haas Cartwright, the middle son of the Cartwright family, Blocker redefined what it meant to be a Western hero, not with bravado or violence, but with kindness, innocence, and a warmth that radiated through the screen. At 6 feet 4 inches and over 300 pounds, he looked like a man who could break a stallion in half. But Haas wouldn't hurt a fly unless he absolutely had to. Born in Texas in 1928, Dan Blocker was a real-life gentle giant. A former teacher and Korean War veteran, he came to acting with a mix of physical presence and surprising vulnerability. That duality became the foundation of Haas, strong enough to handle any brawl, soft enough to cry over a wounded animal. His comedic timing was sharp, his smile disarming, and his loyalty to his on-screen family was palpable. Fans adored him not just for his size, but for his soul. Haas wasn't a sidekick or a punchline. He was often the emotional core of the show, representing empathy in a world that often rewarded force. Whether he was breaking up a fight in Virginia City or nursing a broken heart over a doomed romance, Haas made Bonanza feel human. Off-screen, Blocker was just as beloved. He was known as warm, generous, and fiercely protective of his co-stars and crew. He avoided the spotlight, preferring to spend time with his wife and 4 children. His sudden death in 1972, at just 43 years old from a post-surgery pulmonary embolism, shocked both Hollywood and fans worldwide. Bonanza had never lost a lead actor before, and the impact was seismic. Rather than recast or quietly write him off, the producers made the bold choice to acknowledge his death in the show. It was one of the first times a TV series addressed the death of a main character so directly. And it marked a turning point for Bonanza, one from which it arguably never fully recovered. Dan Blocker didn't just play Haas, he was Haas. And when he left, the heart of Bonanza went with him. Michael Landon, the wild son who became a TV legend. With his boyish grin, tousled hair, and rebellious spark, Michael Landon lit up Bonanza from the moment he stepped onto the Ponderosa as Little Joe Cartwright. The youngest of Ben Cartwright's sons, Little Joe was passionate, impulsive, romantic, and often the one charging headfirst into trouble. But beneath that restless energy was a deep emotional sensitivity, which Landon portrayed with rare nuance. He wasn't just the youngest brother. He was the soul in search of meaning in a harsh world. Born Eugene Maurice Orwitz in 1936, Landon had a turbulent childhood shaped by family dysfunction and emotional trauma. But he channeled that pain into performance. After a few early film roles, he was cast in Bonanza at just 22 years old. What followed was a 14-year journey that transformed him from a rising actor into a household name. As Little Joe, Landon brought fire to the Cartwright family. He was the romantic lead, the hot-headed dreamer, the son who wore his heart on his sleeve. Fans, especially female viewers, loved him. But Landon didn't want to be just a teen idol. He wanted to create. During the later seasons of Bonanza, he began writing and directing episodes, setting the stage for the next act of his career. After Bonanza, Landon's success only grew. He created and starred in Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, 2 beloved series that continued his legacy of emotionally driven, family-centered storytelling. Off-screen, he was a devoted father of 9, a charismatic public figure, and a man who refused to be defined by his past. But in 1991, tragedy struck. Michael Landon was diagnosed with an aggressive form of pancreatic cancer. Just months later, On July 1, 1991, he died at the age of 54. His passing stunned fans worldwide, not just because of his youth, but because he had seemed unstoppable, eternal. Michael Landon left behind more than just episodes and ratings. He left behind stories filled with faith, grief, joy, and resilience. As Little Joe, he was the restless spirit of Bonanza. As Michael Landon, he became one of television's most enduring legends. Pernell Roberts, the rebel brother who walked his own trail. Of the three Cartwright sons, Adam was the most serious, the most educated, and the most mysterious. With his dark clothes, contemplative gaze, and brooding demeanor, he often served as the voice of reason, and occasionally, quiet rebellion. As Pernell Roberts brought this complex character to life, he didn't just give Bonanza depth, he gave it intellectual weight. But just like his on-screen persona, Roberts would eventually choose a path all his own, even if it meant leaving fame behind. Born in Georgia in 1928, Pernell Roberts came to acting through theater, not television. He studied classical drama and had a deep love for Shakespeare and the stage. When he joined Bonanza in 1959, he was already a trained actor with strong ideas about his craft. As Adam Cartwright, he portrayed a son who often questioned the world around him. He was calm, cerebral, and strong, but never flashy. That subtle power made Adam an early favorite among fans. Yet behind the scenes, Roberts struggled. He was dissatisfied with the formulaic nature of the scripts, frustrated by the lack of character development, and concerned about the show's treatment of social issues. He also objected to the way the series portrayed Native Americans and minorities, often clashing with producers. In a time when actors were expected to stay silent and follow studio orders, Roberts became known for his outspoken defiance. In 1965, after 6 successful seasons, he made the bold decision to leave Bonanza, at the height of its popularity. Many thought it was a career-ending move. But Roberts wasn't interested in stardom. He returned to the stage, took on challenging TV roles, and in the late 1980s, found renewed success as the lead in Trapper John, M.D. Off-screen, he was intensely private and deeply principled. He avoided celebrity events and rarely gave interviews. To him, acting was a calling, not a business. Pernell Roberts passed away on January 24, 2010, at the age of 81, after a battle with pancreatic cancer. His death marked the end of the original Bonanza Brotherhood. He had been the last surviving Cartwright son. Roberts never returned to Bonanza, even for its reunion films. But maybe that's fitting. He was the one who always looked to the horizon, questioning, wondering, and forging his own way. Victor Young, the loyal cook who gave Bonanza its cultural heart. In a household filled with strong-willed men, Hop Sing was the quiet force who kept the Ponderosa running. With his white apron, quick wit, and occasional outbursts in Cantonese, he wasn't just a cook, he was family. And in bringing him to life, Victor Young gave Bonanza one of its most enduring and quietly revolutionary characters. Long before diversity became a television talking point, Hop Sing stood as a rare, respectful portrayal of an Asian character on primetime American TV. Born in San Francisco in 1915, Victor Young was one of the few Asian American actors working steadily in Hollywood during the mid-20th century. His career began in the 1930s, often cast in stereotypical roles, including as Charlie Chan's number 2 son in the famous detective series. But Bonanza gave him something different: stability, nuance, and belonging. As Hop Sing, Victor created a character that was often funny, sometimes fierce, and always essential. He wasn't just comic relief, he was part of the Cartwrights' emotional landscape. He cooked, cleaned, worried, scolded, and even occasionally threatened to quit in a huff. And behind the apron was a sense of pride and quiet strength. He may have lived in the background of the big house, but Hop Sing had a presence that no one could ignore. Off-screen, Victor Young led a fascinating life. During World War II, he was briefly interned as a Japanese suspect, despite being Chinese American, and later worked as a flight instructor. He was also a talented cook in real life and authored a Chinese cookbook in the 1970s that showcased his love for food and culture. Tragically, his later years were marked by isolation. In 1980, at the age of 65, Victor was found dead in his apartment under mysterious circumstances involving a gas leak. Though initially suspected to be a suicide, later reports leaned toward accidental causes, but the full truth was never definitively confirmed. Victor Sun Young's life didn't end with the same celebration it deserved, but his legacy, especially through Hop Sing, remains powerful. He brought authenticity, dignity, and humor to a role that could have been a caricature. And for that, he will always be remembered as the quiet heartbeat of the Ponderosa kitchen, and of the family he helped nourish in more ways than one. Ray Teal, the steady lawman who kept Virginia City in line. In the wild frontier of Bonanza, where trouble could ride into town on any given afternoon, Sheriff Roy Coffey stood as a figure of order, calm, wise, and utterly dependable. Played by Ray Teal, the sheriff wasn't flashy, didn't need to prove himself, and rarely raised his voice. But when Roy Coffey showed up, you knew things were about to be handled with dignity and fairness. Ray Teal was born in 1902 and had one of the most prolific careers in Hollywood westerns. With over 300 film and TV credits, he was the quintessential character actor, often playing sheriffs, judges, ranchers, and lawmen. But Bonanza gave him one of his most recognizable roles, allowing him to build a steady, recurring presence that grounded the show's more dramatic moments. As Sheriff Coffey, Teal was a perfect complement to the Cartwrights. He wasn't as morally central as Ben, nor as emotionally complex as the sons. But he was reliable, fair-minded, and unshakably decent. In a world full of quick tempers and quicker guns, he represented the quiet strength of law and experience. Though he never appeared in every episode, his recurring role across nearly 100 episodes left a strong impression. He wasn't just the law, he was part of the community. His interactions with Little Joe, Haas, and especially Ben Cartwright reflected a deep respect and long friendship. And when things went bad in Virginia City, Sheriff Coffey was the one you wanted on your side. Off-screen, Ray Teal was a humble, disciplined actor who preferred to let his work speak for itself. He wasn't a tabloid figure, didn't chase stardom, and rarely gave interviews. But his career was a masterclass in consistency. He elevated every scene he was in, no matter how brief. Ray Teal passed away on April 2, 1976, at the age of 74, after a long and respected career. His death didn't dominate headlines, but it was felt deeply by fans of the genre and especially of Bonanza. He wasn't just another actor on a big Western set, he was a symbol of order in a chaotic world. Ray Teal showed us that sometimes, being dependable is heroic. And in the dusty streets of Virginia City, no badge shined brighter than his. Guy Williams, the forgotten Cartwright who carried a swashbuckler's soul. For a brief moment in Bonanza's storied history, there was a fourth Cartwright, a charming, poised, and quietly magnetic cousin named Will Cartwright. Played by Guy Williams, Will was brought in during a time of behind-the-scenes uncertainty, as Pernell Roberts, Adam, was preparing to leave the show. Though his time on the Ponderosa was short-lived, Guy Williams' presence left a lasting impression, and his legacy reached far beyond the boundaries of Virginia City. Born Armando Catalano in 1924 in New York City, Guy Williams had already achieved international fame before stepping into the Cartwright universe. He was the dashing hero of Disney's Zorro, 1957 to 1959, his masked face and swordplay earning him generations of fans. With his tall frame, matinee idol looks, and natural grace, he was the very image of a leading man. His casting as Will Cartwright in 1964 was no accident. NBC hoped his star power could fill the void left by Roberts' departure. Will Cartwright was written as a cousin to the three brothers, potentially a new heir to the Ponderosa legacy. Guy Williams appeared in only 5 episodes, but his scenes hinted at real potential, a mix of Adam's intelligence and Little Joe's romantic charm. However, fan reaction to replacing Adam was mixed, and Pernell Roberts ultimately stayed a bit longer, leading to Williams' exit before his character could develop further. Though short, his time on Bonanza reflected his talent and elegance. Not long after, Williams would land another iconic role, Professor John Robinson in Lost in Space, 1965 to 1968, further cementing his place in television history. Later in life, Guy Williams moved to Argentina, where Zorro had become a cultural phenomenon. There, he lived a semi-retired life, beloved by fans and treated like a national hero. He passed away quietly in 1989, at the age of 65, and was discovered days later in his Buenos Aires apartment. Though his time in Bonanza was fleeting, Guy Williams remains a fascinating chapter in its legacy, a reminder that even brief appearances can leave lasting shadows. He didn't wear a badge or ride for long, but for a moment, he carried the weight of the Cartwright name with dignity and charm. Lou Frizzell, the itinerant music man who brought melody to the West. In the rugged world of Bonanza, where lawmen, outlaws, and frontier justice often took center stage, Lou Frizzell brought a rare and welcome softness, music. As Dusty Rhodes, a kind-hearted, wandering musician who occasionally crossed paths with the Cartwrights, Frizzell added a gentle rhythm to the series, reminding audiences that even in the toughest territories, there was always room for a song. Born in 1919 in Missouri, Lou Frizzell began his career not as a leading man, but as a music director and voice coach. His warm baritone and deep understanding of melody led him into television and film, where his unique combination of musicality and acting skill found a special niche. Though his role in Bonanza was not among the most frequent, Dusty Rhodes stood out as one of the show's most tender-hearted recurring characters, often appearing with a guitar slung across his back and a story to share. Frizzell's portrayal of Dusty was never loud or showy. He brought with him a calm presence, often serving as a reflective figure, a man who had seen hardship but still chose joy. His musical interludes felt genuine, never forced, and gave Bonanza moments of soul beyond gunsmoke and galloping hooves. He was a wandering spirit, but one who always felt welcome at the Ponderosa. Beyond Bonanza, Lou Frizzell had a diverse career. He appeared in shows like Gunsmoke, The Waltons, and The Rockford Files, often cast as gentle or eccentric characters who softened the edges of harder dramas. He also had a respected stage career and composed for television, continuing to blur the line between musician and actor. Sadly, Lou Frizzell passed away on June 17, 1979, at the age of 59, from lung cancer. His death came quietly, like much of his career, unassuming, yet deeply felt by those who knew his work. Though never a household name, he was the kind of performer who elevated every scene he touched, leaving traces of warmth long after the credits rolled. In a series known for its strength, Lou Frizzell reminded us of the beauty in vulnerability. His songs may have ended, but their echoes still drift gently across the plains of classic television. For 14 seasons, Bonanza wasn't just a television show. It was a window into a world of wide skies, moral clarity, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Week after week, viewers tuned in not just for the action or the frontier justice, but to return to the Ponderosa, where fathers led with wisdom, sons loved fiercely, and even the loneliest trails found their way back home. Now, decades later, the faces that once defined this world have slowly, gently disappeared into history. Lorne Greene, the unshakable father figure. Dan Blocker, whose kind eyes and big heart made Haas unforgettable. Michael Landon, the romantic spirit whose fire lit up every scene. Pernell Roberts, the principled rebel who challenged the show's boundaries. Each Cartwright rode his own path, some long, some heartbreakingly short, but all left behind a legacy etched into the fabric of American television. And beyond the family, others stood tall. Victor St. Young, who broke ground with grace as hops sing. Ray Teal, the quiet lawman who held the line. Guy Williams, the short-lived cousin with a legacy of his own. Lou Frizzell, the wandering musician who brought warmth and melody to the West. Together, they didn't just build a show, they built a world. One where justice meant something. Where men wept, forgave, laughed, and loved. Where family was more than blood, It was loyalty, and sacrifice, and choosing to stand by one another, no matter the storm. As we remember these actors and the lives they led both on and off screen, we're reminded of something deeper. Bonanza endures not because of the gunfights or the cattle drives, but because of the people. The ones who made us feel. The ones who rode with us through youth, through grief, through growing up. They may be gone now, every one of them, but their stories live on. In reruns. In memories. In the echo of a theme song that still stirs the heart. And somewhere, just beyond the ridge, the Ponderosa still waits. Open. Vast. Eternal.